Hey friends, it's your pal Mike Shea from Sly Flourish, here with another episode of Sly Flourish's Lazy GM Prep. In this weekly show, I go through steps from the book Return of the Lazy Dungeon Master while preparing for my Sunday role-playing game. In this case, I am running the Shadowdark RPG by Arcane Library in a setting called the Gloaming, which is part of Curse Scroll 1, a Shadowdark RPG supplement available over at the Arcane Library. This show is brought to you by the patrons of Sly Flourish. Patrons get access to all kinds of stuff like the City of Arches sourcebook, Uncovered Secrets Volume 1 and 2, whole bunch of tools, tips, and tricks to help you run your game. They get access to the awesome Lazy GM community over on Discord and the monthly Q&A over on the Patreon itself. And they help me put on shows like this. To the patrons of Sly Flourish, thank you so much for your support. I also want to mention that the steps that I am walking through for all of this game prep come from the book Return of the Lazy Dungeon Master. My book, Return of the Lazy Dungeon Master, which is currently on sale for 30% off for the hardcover and PDF copy and 50% off for the digital copy. You can get the digital copy for $4, $4 US, anywhere in the world. So if you don't have Return of the Lazy Dungeon Master and you want the book that I am doing all of this prep for, now is a fantastic time to go pick it up. You can find a link to the sale for Return of the Lazy Dungeon Master in the show notes. It is only going on until 3 July. So if you're watching this video, please go take a look. Hardcover version for $25. That includes the hardcover version, the PDF, and the EPUB. You can also get the soft cover for under $4. Fantastic deal. Where did we end? Our heroes made their way. Boy, I was a bad GM last week. Our heroes were in a dungeon known as the Vaults of Memnon. Memnon is sort of the god of chaos. And we began the session in a big chamber where there was a weird leather hanging that turned out to be the skin of the god Marina that had some universal laws etched into it in tattoos. These laws no longer working. And they found out that the god Memnon had a weapon forged able to sever the skin of Madeira and destroy elements of the physical universe, destroy laws of the physical universe. Madeira being the god of law and Memnon being the god of chaos. And Memnon had, I think it's called the entropic blade, which is able to sever away laws from it, which is very creepy. And like I checked in and made sure, like, I know this is creepy. Are we okay? And like, yeah, we're okay. So I'm trying to make it more divine and less like weird slasher horror stuff. But that's hard to do when you're talking about flaying the skin off of somebody. So, but I didn't push too much onto it. So that was kind of cool. They took the big sheath, they rolled up this big leather thing that they've got that has these former laws of gravity, and they're carrying that around. And they went to another door, and the door had a big sword on it. And it was this big obsidian door in this vault. And I think somebody went up and touched it and took a D6 damage for trying to open the door without really figuring it out. And then one of the characters took the sheath of he wore it like a cloak. He took this leather thing and wore it like a cloak of these universal laws that are no longer working, wrapped it around himself, and then tried to open the door, thinking maybe that's the key to opening the door, which I think was, if I had to dissect it deeply, it was a little bit of metagamey of like, well, you must have put the key in front of us to get through this door, and the key must be the last thing we found. But it's the laws of, law, right? It's universal law for a door that's bound by chaos, because this is the Vault of Memnon, not the Vault of Madeira. You wouldn't have a key be the Madeira key. So he went up and pushed the door open with the cloak on and took 2d6 damage, which dropped him to 0. And then I decided that also killed him outright. That like, if you try to open the door of chaos wearing the laws of the universe on your back, it's going to go badly for you. And it did. And so that was the end of our scout leader, Lauren, I think. I try not to remember their names. Lauren, the scout leader, was disintegrated. So he's like, oh my God, right? That was the first death. We had 3 potential deaths. So then they get in the next chamber and they see somebody cowering in the corner, which is a new character. Please tell me I wrote it down. I bet I didn't. No, I think I did. No, I didn't. So we have a new Glorious Dead. And that Glorious Dead, this is the 15th Glorious Dead. Lauren, the Goblin Scout Leader, killed trying to open the door of chaos wearing the laws of the universe like a cloak. So they died, and I don't have my notebook around. It's terrible. I don't know who the other character is. Give me 1 sec. I'm going to run upstairs because I wrote it down in my notebook, but I didn't write it down here. So I'll be right back. I got to get my notebook. All right, let's see if I can find. This is my big Trapper Keeper. Look at my cool Trapper Keeper notebook that I keep. I have different little tabs for the campaigns that are going on. And where's my cool, somewhere in here. Look at my cool, Kelsey Dion gave this to a friend of mine who gave it to me. A cool Shadowdark sticker. It's not actually a Trapper Keeper, it's something else, but I'm calling it my Trapper Keeper. You can't change my mind. The Gloaming. Did I throw away the notes? Oh my God, I'm terrible. I think I tossed them. Why would I have done that? I cleaned out my notebook because I had so many extra pages, and I think if I tossed it, I didn't write it down. But the fact that I didn't keep track of who the new character is, it's called something Apples. I'm going to just call him Apples because I remember it was called Apples. And he was trying to collect apples. He went down into the Vault of Memnon to find apples because that's where you would go. And he's a fighter. I think he's a halfling fighter. And who wouldn't want to find apples anywhere in the Vault of Memnon? Lauren is dead. Something Apples, who I think is a halfling fighter. So we're going to do a new session planning template today, and we have put in the date, and oh look, I did. Mike Shea, thank you, past Mike Shea. Bram Apples is his name, so I just didn't have in my character section, but I did write it down. I did. See, I am not the worst DM. I am probably firmly in the average of DMs. If there's a bell curve of DMs of really fantastic, I'm probably right somewhere in the middle. I think that's probably likely. I'm somewhere in the middle. So the characters were going, and how I was a terrible DM. So they went in the next vault room, and in the next room, there's a bunch of melted cultists. So imagine like 20 evil cultists of Memnon, and they were cultists of Ramlot. So they were not cultists of Memnon. They were cultists of Ramlot who came into the vault to try to recover the sword. And in an attempt to recover the sword, they had like melted together. And one of the characters, who I think was somebody, well, I think it was supposed to be the guy, the character who died, who's now a name I don't even remember, Lauren. I think it was Lauren who was supposed to have the vision, but somebody had a vision, or maybe it was Bram actually saw the event take place, of cultists trying to recover this evil sword, and in doing so, getting melted into a big pile of molten cultists. And then a huge demon went over and grabbed the sword, and it like burned his hand, but he survived and he took it and then wandered off with it. And that was a powerful demon that came here. So I think Bram Apples actually saw that event take place. So the sword is gone. So they went into this vault, they see the melted cultists, and they realize the sword is gone. Then I think the light went out. They got attacked by rust monsters, but then also the light went out when they were getting attacked by rust monsters. And this is where Joe, my friend Joe, who's here in the chat, like almost got teary-eyed because he's like, I love rust monsters. Like the rust monsters, he's like, they're really, like they're like the default D&D monster for me. So he got very emotional of fighting the rust monsters while other people were busy losing all their gear, trying to stab it and get attacked by the rust monsters. They didn't lose as much as they could have, and they ended up doing very smart webbing of the monsters so that they didn't lose all of their gear. But they managed to defeat the rust monsters. But then I think the light went out, and the cultist ooze pile started to like reach out for them. And then when the light came back, it like solidified again. Because I always, I like to foreshadow the darkness, even if it's not an actual direct threat. It's like, well, one person like felt one of their crispy hands wrap around theirs. So then they went into the next room, which was the actual Vault of the Javelin. And this is the vault where the Skull of Memnon wanted to be placed. And they found out that and here's that interesting thing again about like the nostalgia of the players is different than the nostalgia of the characters, especially if you've been through 15 characters. And so they fought the new version, the returned version of the hag Drusilla, who had been turned into a Medusa Marilith. And if you recall, last time I was like, maybe we should throw some death dogs in there to go right from our old Clash in the 1980 Clash of the Titans movie. I have some death dogs in there because there's 6 of them. I think there ended up being 5. I think one person didn't make it, and I was like. And then I realized, like, I'm going to kick their ass with this thing if I throw 2 death dogs on there, too. They're just going to get wiped out. And that isn't a matter of, like, the roll of the die went the wrong way and it'll be fun. It was like, no, Mike decided to add death dogs and the death dogs wiped everybody out. So I said, no, we're just going to have Madeira, or we're just going to have Drusilla, the Maryland Medusa. And what that meant is nobody could look at her. So everybody was at disadvantage on their attacks and she had advantage on her attacks. And I think they did something to her. So she was I can't remember, but she was going around slashing every single character one time with her blade. She would whip around in her serpentine form and slash them. And then she would bite one of them. And that was really the only like major effect she had. She'd bite one person with her Medusa bite and then she'd slash everybody else. But she came really close to wiping out the characters. In fact, she beheaded one of the characters. One of the characters dropped to 0 and it was a critical hit. She was not blinded. I can't remember if they blinded her or not. I don't remember if they got some. Oh, no, they didn't. I'll tell you how they got out of it. And how they got out of it was really interesting. But they were on their way to a TPK, just fighting her. And she critically hit one of the characters. And that character was Irina, the elf warlock of Almazot's. And I argued that when you drop to 0 on a critical hit, that means she beheads you. Which, again, one thing Shadowdark doesn't have is clear rules on when characters drop versus when they die. And the arguments on the Shadowdark Discord server are you should do what makes sense to you. So I've done the sort of I roll a d4 to determine how many rounds it is until you die. But there can be extenuating circumstances in which you will just plain die. I mean, D&D 5e has that. D&D 5e has lots of places where if you drop to 0 because of an attack, you're killed. And I don't think it's inappropriate here. And the idea of like you're fighting a Medusa Marilith and she gets a critical hit on you that drops you to 0, the idea that she beheads you seems reasonable. So she beheaded Irina. And so then she knocked somebody else out. And people were like, oh my God. Yeah, and so people were going, oh my God. So Uralt is wearing a suit of armor that is the armor of Saint Targarius, or Saint Taragnus. And one of the features of the armor of Saint Taragnus is that you can summon an archangel for you. And he said, I think it's time to summon the archangel. And it says you can only do so once a month. And I said, I made the argument to him just to make sure it was clear. One more month is not going to pass in this game. So this is going to be the one time you can use this ability. And he said, we're in a bad state. I'm going to do it. So he summoned an archangel, and the archangel was super powerful. And it just, I think in 2 hits, took out Drusilla, the Marilith. Like they'd already knocked her down pretty far, but she was still up and about. And 2 of the characters were down. One was dead. So they used and the archangel just sweeps over and beheads the Medusa, kills Drusilla again. So then they said, okay, that's great, but our character's still dead. Can we ask the archangel to resurrect Irina? And I argued like, well, the idea that you would summon an archangel and the archangel would do 2 attacks and then disappear was kind of lame. So I'm like, yeah, the archangel's like, sure, I will resurrect one of your fallen comrades. And it resurrects Irina. So Irina's head goes poop, and then Irina's back alive again. And they ask the player of Irina, do you want your character back? Because I might want to try a new character. And they said, yes, I would like my character back. So Irina was resurrected. And then they're in this place and they're like, great. And the skull says, put me on the pedestal. And they're like, well, let's loot the room first. And so they're going around the room and they see that there is a javelin called the javelin. It's not a javelin of lightning, but it's like I forget the name of it, but it's a really super powerful, Memnon something javelin of blasting or something like that. And it's sitting on a pedestal, or it's sitting on a rack. And Uralt goes over and grabs it. And I said, you disintegrate. Right. And everyone's like, oh, and I have never seen a wider reaction from a group of players of all different kinds all at once. I had at least a couple of players who just said they thought I was kidding, right? They thought I was just making a joke. Because sometimes I'll make jokes like that. I'll be like, oh yeah, you're disintegrated. Just kidding, you're not disintegrated. But I was serious. I was like, you're disintegrated. Like you just grabbed, like you saw, and my argument for this is we just saw 20 cultists in another room in a molten pile trying to get a hold of the other item. We know that this place is trapped to shit, right? You know how terrible this is. And the idea that you'd walk right up and Memnon, the skull, would absolutely disarm the trap if you did what Memnon said. And I think somebody's argument was, well, Memnon said it was okay. And it was like, yeah, the evil skull who you threatened to throw into a pool of acid and stuff like that, lied to you, should not be coming as a big surprise. So all around the table was denial and bargaining and complete surprise and anger, like super anger. I had all the emotions were aimed at me when I said that. And the one emotion I couldn't pick up was from the player of Geralt, of Geralt, because they play remotely. But later they said something like, I was trying to figure out an adult way to say what I wanted. So okay, they weren't real happy about it either. And so then one of the players in the bargaining stage of grief bargained, could I have seen that something bad was going to have happened? And stopped him before he did that. And I said, you know what? Sure. It'll be a hard DC. So it'll be a DC 15, a DC 15 intelligence check to see it. And this was Morgan. And so Morgan's player said, okay, DC 15, and rolled and got a 15 and said, I got it. And said, don't touch the thing. And so we rolled back a little bit and I went to reach for the thing and then, no, don't touch it. And then, so they had the image of the character getting disintegrated, but they didn't, the character, Geralt was not disintegrated. And then they properly put the skull on the pedestal and then that disarmed it. And then they got the javelin and then left the terrible Vault of Memnon so they would never have to come back to this terrible place. So that was the last game. And so we ended the session outside of the Vault of Memnon and in the chambers of the village of Nighthaven. So they're in Nighthaven outside the Vault of Memnon. So I had some thoughts. I was trying to think about, okay, what's the strong start? And one strong start would be that I have this group and the players remembered them. I forgot about them. But a couple of sessions back, I think it's quite a few sessions back, before they came here, I had this group of the Knights of the Knights of Mugdalblub, who are, we can put these in our old session notes, who are these Ooze Knights. I was like, you know what? I want Ooze Knights. Ooze Knights sound cool, but I can't remember where I dropped them in. Here we go. A Mugdalblub no longer faces, so he has reached into other worlds and some of the riders of Mugdalblub, each a champion from another world, cursed to live between their original world and that of the Ooze God. So I dropped them in a while ago and said like they had a vision of and the characters have become aware that the riders of Mugdalblub. Let's see if I was a good citizen and put these in the NPCs section. I did. Look at that. I have the Riders of Mugdalblub. So I was thinking I could have a couple of the Riders of Mugdalblub show up at the town, and they could be real badass, right? We could have like Garavad of Vol and the Wind Whisper show up, and that could be kind of fun. But that's kind of a big deal. I think so. I don't know if I want to have them show up or not. They brought it up because the characters said, hey, villagers of Nighthaven, if you want to do something about the world being destroyed, keep an eye out for the Riders of Mugdalblub, because we think they're on the way and we'd love you to help defend us from them. Would be a great thing. Are these like the ring wraiths? They are like the ring wraiths. They're Mugdalblub's ring wraiths. Different kinds: a reaver, a mage, a fire giant, a fey assassin, and a druid were the different set. It might actually be cool to have Garavad of Vol and Clovilla of Set be the two that show up. So the idea is I like to think of them as like the evil Knights of the Round Table, right? They're sent out on a quest, and their quest is go find those characters and go find the what they've got. And so we could have two of them show up. The great commotion is like two of these guys show up, and then the characters have to like fight them. That could be, that'd be a good strong start. I mean, let's go with that. That sounds like fun. So one thing is I want to make sure that we get, like my one goal I have for this session is that we get to the next place, that they get to the front door of Last Watch. I want them to arrive at Last Watch, right? The arrival at Last Watch. So then the question is, if we start with a big fight, sometimes these fights, even in Shadowdark, can go on a while. And that will eat up a big chunk of the time. And then if we do that, I mean, maybe it's not quite as hard if the other villagers are there fighting, because we don't want to make the villagers totally wimpy. And would the villagers end up just wiping out these two Riders of Mugdalblub? Well, the Riders of Mugdalblub could have a small contingent of Mugdalblub people that the village is fighting, while the characters have to fight the two Riders. So this would be like a good way of like handling a war. So that could be fun. But then you have the journey across the Shimmering Valley. Do we want to have... I guess we can have a number of encounters based on how much time we've got. So I had some thoughts about while they're going around the Shimmering Valley, and we can link to the Shimmering Valley. Look at that, I spelled it wrong. There we go. So the Shimmering Valley, here's the full map. Open up, view original. So they are in Nighthaven here. They have to then follow this path all the way around the outer edge. It's funny, it's actually supposed to be a lake, but what I'm saying is no, this outer edge is actually a walkway. And so there'd be a huge waterfall. So we have a couple of like fantastic places. The waterfall could be one of them. And that would be actually like, there could be a camping spot there. Then they make their journey along here, and then they get to the passage to Last Watch, which is actually known as the Valley of Heaven, or the Valley of the Songs of Heaven, because there are harpies there who will sing you to death. They will sing you off the edge and into the below. So let's start with some locations. So we have Fall of Souls, the Falls of Souls, the Falls of the Afterlife, Falls of the Afterlife would be one location. Another location would be the Valley. It's not really a valley. What would you call that? The Ravine of the Songs of Heaven. And then the doors of Last Watch. And I want them to get to Last Watch. Our goal is to get there. And I don't know how many different locations we'll want along the way, or what encounters. So we can have what encounters they might run into. Normally, you would like roll for all of the traveling encounters along the way, right? This is kind of different because they're traveling underground. You could also do it as a hex crawl. One of the tricks, though, when you're doing a hex crawl, given that I have like a firm ending, I know where I want it to go. I know that I want them to arrive at Last Watch. And the reason why is like one of the players, I think, may be leaving the group in a couple of months. And I want to make sure we get to the end of the campaign before then. I want them to have had the full campaign. So I kind of like to, which means I now have sort of like, okay, I've got to have an ending in mind. So what's the ending? Where do I see it going? And where I see it going is like, I think there's going to be a confrontation with Mugdalblub once they have all three objects, which is the cloak, the sphere of annihilation, and the obsidian witch knife. And so when they have all three objects, the cloak of the well of worlds, the obsidian witch knife, and the sphere of annihilation, and they're on their way to get the sphere of annihilation. If they rescue Haldren, then they go. So the big places that they're going to go are Last Watch, then Haldren's Tower, which we could even probably do pretty quickly if we needed to, and then back to the Mugdalblub's chambers. So there's a fair bit of like overland travel to get there, but I think I'm going to abstract the overland travel a bit in order to get the pacing a little higher, which means instead of doing the traditional way of roll per hex for things like that while they're traveling a wrong location, I'm instead going to say we're going to run as many encounters as we have the time for. And the encounters I will probably roll randomly to determine what the encounters are. And so potential encounters could be rock slide, could be an encounter type. Kobolds in trouble, the idea that there's some kobolds that have slipped off the edge and they're being attacked by specters. Relatives of the characters reaching up could be one of them. Knights. So if we're going to do the riders of Mugdalblub in the town, then we're not going to have more riders along the way. I'd probably like to have about 6 potential encounters along the way. What are some other, so besides spiders and besides ettercaps, what would be some other, so do they have wyverns? I'm sure there's wyverns in here. A wyvern might be a fun thing to fight. Level 8, so not super powerful. We could have a couple of wyverns. Would be kind of fun, I think. Soul-touched wyverns. I don't know what the soul touch means. Maybe it's just. I already have harpies because harpies are going to be at the Ravine of the Songs of Heavens, and we could put a page number down just to make future Mike Shea happy. I should do that for wyverns too. Wyverns are page 265, and what was the other one I was going to do? I already forgot. Harpies, bees, harpy 226. 2 more potential encounters that they could run into. So anything good that they could run into, a shrine, hidden shrine of who? let's take a look at the gods. And let's have a good shrine where they could receive a blessing. When you're making your random encounter tables, it helps to put nice things in it. Not everything should be bad. Saint Taragnus would be great. Gedi. We never actually did anything with Gedi. Ord. So let's do, we'll actually make it random. And I don't even know if I'm going to do this. And then we'll do 1 to 2. So we'll do 1 to 2 is Saint Taragnus. 3 to 4 is Gedi. 5 to 6 is Ord. I don't know what they will get. So what do they get for worshiping at this place? For Saint Taragnus, probably the equivalent of a blessing. Blessing until next long rest. Gedi would be no need to expend rations until they go back up top. And we'll say for 3 days. And Ord will give 1 piece of vital knowledge. That sounds fun. I'd like 1 more. Let's do like a quick just skim through the monsters. Think like what kind of stuff would attack them. Grix would be cool. Did they face Grix before? I don't know if they have. We'll do Grix. How many Grix? They're level 4, 2 to 4. So 1d2, let's see, 1d3 plus 1 Grix. So we have some potential encounters along the way. I will roll for that. Like what of these might be behind the falls of the afterlife? And then we might, depending on what time looks like, we have that. So let's see. Nighthaven outside. So which knights of Ramlot, which knights of Mugdalblub are going to show up? Probably Garavid of Vol and Clovilla of Set. And they are a fire giant and a druid. Let's see. Fire giant is on page what? Giants Fire is on page 2, and Druid is on page 213. So they arrive along with a contingent of Mugdalblub ooze conscripts, some of whom, so we got our strong start. And the idea is that the conscripts are going to be mostly taken care of by the villagers. And the characters will have to fight Garavet of Vol and Clovilla of Set. So let's see, conscripts, the riders of Mugdalblub have conscripted half ooze folks. Some from, what was the name of the village? Is 307 Wardenwood. So some of these will be people they'll recognize. These small armies comb the countryside to find the Well of Worlds. What other secrets? Many, let's see. Some believe the Shimmering Valley is a rift to the underworld, the souls into which souls flow. Some souls don't seek the transfer or rebel against the transfer. Rebel, trying to climb out of the rift before they reach the other side. In all caps. Do we have any secrets of Ram? Oh, you know what? Let's cheat and let's look at last week's notes and see if I have any secrets from there that I can move over. All the Madeira Memnon stuff is mostly nobody compete. So Olgar, champion of Ramlot. What does he seek? Does he care if the world is going to be devoured? He thinks that once the world is devoured, plans to rule over the Gloaming once it has been devoured and digested by Almazats. Worlds devoured by Almazats aren't completely lifeless. Remnants remain. Isn't that the definition of remnants? It's kind of a funny phrase. So he's not completely wrong that he could rule over it. So all my secrets last time were about Madeira and Memnon. So none of those serve me here. So I need 6 more secrets. What have we got? So I'm going to quickly run through the other steps and then go back to secrets just to make sure. So we have Rokara and Mizo from the other locations, from Nighthaven. Fantastic locations, I don't think we need to worry too much about because we've got maps and stuff. Monsters we kind of listed up in the notes. It's probably, so we've kind of got these sort of in place. I didn't put Grix. Where are Grix from? 223. Spectral relatives. So those would be specters. No specters? Are they just wraiths? The wraiths are super powerful. Do they not have I am shocked. They have ghosts. So I guess we'll do ghosts of 217. All right. So what are the ghosts? Do the ghosts know anything? What else do we want to say about Ramlot? So we have Olgar, a portal to Ramlot's abyssal realm, sits in the depths of Lastwatch. Olgar has summoned an army of demons and demonic orcs to rule over Lastwatch. What is he doing with Haldren? Olgar torments and keeps Haldren alive to learn what he can about the worlds beyond. He wants to invade multiple worlds too. So Haldren is still alive. What other 2, 4, what do I have? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I have 4 more. Boop, 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 boop. Keep track of what secrets I got. What other secrets do I have? What are the things they could learn about Ramlot? Who built the fortress of Ramlot? The fortress built centuries ago by an orc warlord known as what? Go to our names. Boop, 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 boop. Known as Draga, Doomvice, Doomblade, Doom what? Doombearer, Doomflinger, Draga, Doombearer. What else? Could there be, so if you go into, what if we had a good guy, an orc tribe of who? We could go to the inn table. Let's see. We got cats running around upstairs. This will be fun. Let's see. 12, the Devil's 5. Let's see, the Devil's Rangers, no. The Iron Rangers. Oh, I like Emerald Rangers. The Lightless Rangers. The orc tribe of the Lightless Rangers was decimated by Olgar's orcs of Ramlot. The remaining members are imprisoned in Lastwatch. So we have some good guy orcs that could be around. The Lightless Rangers is an orc tribe that the Lightless Rangers served as guides, scouts, and protectors of those of noble heart traveling in the Shimmering Valley. The Lightless Rangers follow the principle, seek to help the transference from life to death in as smooth and painless a way as possible. So the Lightless Rangers, they're sort of a death cult, but they're good guy death cult. And their death cult is hey, people die, their souls flow down the soul. I guess that's a secret. The falls of, what are they called? Falls of the Afterlife, we call them Falls of Oblivion, are said to transfer the souls of the Gloaming into the afterlife. Yeah. Are any of these what do I call them? The Lightless Rangers? So they could run into scouts of the Lightless Rangers. Now I need to have an 8th. Now I need an 8th encounter. I had a thought, mean wraiths. Let's see. A dark wraith. 1 to 2 dark wraiths rise up from below. So that works. Okay, so I've got my let's see, how are we doing? So characters. I never actually reviewed the characters. So I've got Morrigan. Morrigan is the possessor of the Obsidian Witch Knife, daughter of Gwendolyn and Haldren, who seeks out, is kind of the pinnacle of kind of this whole thing. Hopefully doesn't die. Recently beheaded, but restored. Elf Warlock of Almazatz, who kind of is here to see if things are correct when Almazat should devour the world. Uralt, nearly disintegrated, former Knight of St. Yidris. Bram Apples, a halfling fighter champion of Memnon. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention that Memnon said, hey, do you want to be my champion? And Bram Apple said, hell yeah, I want to do that. So he's now a champion of Memnon. He's the one that's wielding the javelin and seeks out the sword and the spear, or the sword and the armor. Dazder is a human witch frog shaman, is not going to be there today. He's away. And actually, Uralt is also going to be away. I forgot. So this could be if they're going to fight 2 members, this could be really hard. I could reduce it to 1 and have only Garibaldi Vol be there. It's 2, but they're pretty... Yeah, we'll see. We'll see how that goes. We'll run it, because it doesn't make sense that they'd face only 2, or only 1 knight. They'd probably face 2. Monsters and treasure we're going to do in the books, so those are good. So I think I've got everything. I've got a good bunch of stuff. I got some fun encounters for them along the Shimmering Valley. I've got a good strong start. I've got a bunch of secrets and clues they can discover. I think we are all set. So I'm going to export this. Export to Markdown. And then we are going to open it. I'm going to run my little game notes script. And it's going to dump an output. If you want to see what the output looks like, this is what my output looks like. Well, look at that, right? That's perfect. Look at that layout. I hit print, and then I'll put it in my Trapper Keeper. Friends, I want to thank you for hanging out with me today while we prepared for my Sunday role-playing game. If you like the show and you want to see more stuff like this, the best way to do so is to subscribe to the Sly Flourish newsletter. It is absolutely free to sign up. You get a free adventure generator for signing up, and you get a weekly RPG-related email sent to your inbox. You can also become a patron of Sly Flourish. Patrons get access to all kinds of tools, tips, tricks, guides, books, things to help you run your game, plus access to the awesome Lazy DM community over on Discord, and you get to support me directly for the shows that I do here. And you can pick up any of my books, including The Sale of Return of the Lazy Dungeon Master, the book that I just based my prep on, available for 30% off the hardcover, 50% off the digital price, less than $4 to pick up the digital version of the book. There's no reason you shouldn't. It's a really good book. I like it. I highly recommend it, being that I'm the guy that wrote it. So you can pick that up. Links for all of those are in the show notes. Thank you all so much. Have a great day, and get out there and play an RPG.